It being 7:03, I call the Lisle Library District Board meeting for August 12th, 2020 to order. Before we do roll call, I'll read the announcement. The Lisle Library District recognizes Governor Pritzker's Executive Order number 2020-07 and the Government Emergency Administration Act number 100-06-40, which suspends certain requirements of the Open Meetings Act, allowing library trustees to participate remotely. All motions will require a roll call vote. So, Chris, can we have roll call as we begin the meeting?
Marjorie Bartelli.
Here.
Thomas Duffy.
Here.
Thomas Hummel.
Here.
Karen Larson.
Here.
Jenny Norton.
Oh, she's muted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jenny, you're muted.
You're muted, Jenny.
Oh, sorry.
Jenny Norton.
She froze up.
She went back. There she is.
Yeah. We're just taking roll call. You're freezing up. You got the problem I had last week.
We just need an eye.
Yeah, but I think she's frozen. I don't think it's just the screen. I think it's.
Should I move on?
Yeah, why don't you come back around to her?
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Emily Swissay.
Here.
And you want to try Trustee Norton again?
Jenny Norton.
Here. Still,
Okay.
hopefully.
Yep. All right. Okay, perfect. All right. Next item on the agenda is opportunities for visitors to speak. Is there anybody in the audience, Tatiana or Director Weinstein? No? All right. And no email correspondence either? Okay. Next item on the agenda is assignments for reviewing monthly accounts payable. This past month, I reviewed the July billings. Next month, the plan is for Secretary Swistak and Trustee Sullivan to review the August billings in September. If it's not doable, we'll just keep what we've been doing the last several months, and I'll just review them.
Tom,
Sure.
Tom got a question.
Yep.
I can do them, but I don't get the email from the accounting person. Is the accounting person still Jackie?
Mm-hmm.
Last time I could have done them, but she did not send me the email.
Yeah,
So
I
will
think.
she?
Yeah, I think the last we were probably because the library was closed. I think that's why I was just doing them. Now this past
Okay.
month the library was open, but that's fine. I mean, we're just probably just trying to keep, on this, any extra people in the library. But I mean, you guys might do it. That's fine. I'm just leaving it open in case Director Weinstein.
What we can do is set up on the meeting room for reviewing purposes. If trustees want to come in and do that here, we can do that in the meeting room. So what we're trying to do is keep the admin space because it's so tight with the amount of employees in that one office. So if we can accommodate in this space, we'll do that.
I can do it either way. I just don't want to shirk any responsibilities. So you tell me how you want it done.
Okay. Well, we almost got a whole month, or at least 3-4 weeks before we get to that point. So we got time.
Okay.
Yep. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This is Trustee Duffy. I move to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion. Can I have a second?
Sullivan seconds.
Trustee Sullivan. All right. Any discussion or question, comments on the consent agenda or any changes? Seeing none. Can we have roll call, please, Chris?
Notice that Jenny.
Jenny is out, so we're going to
Okay.
read that she left the meeting at 7 to 8. I'm sure she'll bounce back in.
Yeah, she said her let's see what. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So, Chris, you want to do roll call?
Thomas Duffy.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Karen Larson. Jenny Norton. Emily Swistak.
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye. And Jenny's going to be trying to log back in. She just tried to reboot, so she'll be joining us again in a few minutes. Next item on the agenda is committee reports. I'll skip finance in case Trustee Norton pops in. So we'll skip right now to personnel and policy. Secretary Swistak, you want to maybe just give a quick review, and then I don't know, probably most of our work is going to be voted on, but you want to give an update?
Thank you, President Hummel. Last week, we had a Personnel and Policy Committee meeting. I feel like it was a very robust meeting. We had lots to discuss. There are quite a few policies that are coming forth to the whole board tonight for action. So we'll talk more when we get to those. One of the things that we talked about that's not coming up tonight, though, we talked about working on adjusting the director's performance review or evaluation, and in tandem with that, rewriting the director's job description. And so we discussed that the director and I will meet to start working on the new job description for the director, and then we'll bring it to the Personnel and Policy Committee, and then from there we'll bring it to the whole board to discuss on. We talked about, one of the other committee members mentioned that maybe we could ask everyone to give their input first and then funnel it down. And I felt more comfortable starting small and then going out. So that's the plan as far as that goes. But then, as I said, the policies that we discussed will be coming forth tonight.
All right, thank you. Next is physical plant meeting, or physical plant committee, I'm sorry. Vice President Bartelli.
Yes, Trustee Bartelli, we did not meet. I just have a general question. When we get into, I see on CCS reports for tonight, possibility of an RFQ and so on. I'm wondering where in the process we might want to include or discuss some of the FQC recommendations that were made. We haven't addressed those, of course, because of COVID, number one, and also other considerations we've been addressing. I just want to be sure that none of those recommendations that were rated fall through the cracks. So I'm hoping that my committee probably won't be meeting, but we need to be sure that we keep those recommendations in mind. That's it.
I think that we will address the FQC physical plant.
I can't hear.
Okay, we will address the FQC recommendations as we move through the fiscal year.
Okay.
The CCS discussion will more focus on the larger capital improvements. And I know that Assistant Director McCullen has some updates, or will have an update on preparing quotes, because I think what's coming this summer is more about the immediate fix to the kind of off, I don't know what we want to call it, with the flooding issue in our East End parking lot with the mulch that comes down, and we want to remedy some of the water coming down so it doesn't ice up this winter, things like that. And that's on the docket, but we will address that.
Great, thank you.
We can do that in the physical plant meeting as well, upcoming.
All right. Next one is review of the minutes. This past month, Trustee Duffy and Trustee Sullivan reviewed the minutes. That's part of the IPLAR report, which we'll be voting on later on in the meeting. So really, that's the end of the committee that's done their job already. So I will be dissolving that committee until next year. We will double back with Finance Committee when Treasurer Norton probably pops back on. So I will we'll try to touch base again on that one a little bit later on, probably after we come out of executive session. So next item on the agenda is executive session. Would somebody like to read the citation and make a motion to go in executive session?
This is Trustee Duffy. I move to go into executive session 5 ILCS 120-2C5, the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired.
I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Vice
Sullivan
President
will
Bartelli
second.
will second.
I'll give it to Vice President Bartelli. I think she got in there first, I think.
Little stinker.
Any questions, comments, or discussion on this motion? None. Okay, Chris, can we have a roll call, please?
Thomas Duffy,
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Karen Larson. Jenny Norton. Absent. Liz Sullivan,
Aye.
Emily Swistek,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye. We will be going into executive session at 7:15. Being 7:29, we are back in open session. Just to finish up committee reports, because we have Treasurer Norton back online now. Is there any update on the Finance Committee?
No update again as of today.
All righty. Next item on the agenda is number 7, unfinished business, facility options, CCS update, drafts, and discussion. I will turn the meeting over to Director Weinstein. You want to go first or just turn over the CCS?
Yes, thank you. In the
Okay.
past, there is a status update through August 7th, and I will now pass it off to CCS to walk us through the status update.
No problem. Okay, so starting from the top, like we usually do in downtown developer discussions, there have been no viable interested parties in the downtown area to date. So we can continue monitoring that if there's any questions, but at this point, it's been a number of months. And I know that the board at the last meeting has recommended that we start going through that process of making steps towards a capital improvement project. So I'll leave it at that for now. We can go into discussion a bit later on, but the summary is there's no viable options on the table right now. In terms of the point B, design consultant request for qualifications, RFQ, we did make the couple revisions that were asked for specifically on the funding statement in the document. So you guys all got final drafts. I will admit that in final review, there's one typo I will correct if this is all good. On page 6 of the RFQ, there is a number 5 and a written out 5 and a number 10. I will correct it at the top of the page under point B, outline of performance 1. So apologies for that. But other than that, I believe everything else is ready to go for your direction from last month. Pending a date that the board, if there would be a motion to release an RFQ, was determined. And the way I look at this from the board's perspective, the recommendation would be if you guys are comfortable when you are, we could release this, probably a week or week and a half, 2 weeks, something after your direction. This would have to go in the advertisement, which you also would have to go out into the publications so that everyone's aware of it. And then you'd leave it open for 2, maybe 3 weeks for respondents to come back. And then you'd start that process like we talked about last month. And that was in if everyone had last month's board packet listed out the steps and everything else, we'd follow that exactly. I'll probably pause there and actually, President Hummel, I'll let you ask if there's any questions at this point on that document before moving on to the next piece of it.
So just to clarify, what was the correction you were alluding to?
Very last page.
Sorry, what was that?
It's just a numerical versus written word for number 5 versus 10 years.
Correct. So the written 5 is what we would recommend doing right now. On page 6 of the RFQ document, that you have.
Okay.
What page in the packet?
49.
It's page 49 of the packet, page 6 for the CCS.
The very top right text. My
Oh, I
apologies,
gotcha. Last 5, gotcha. So it should be 5 or is it 10?
5. It should be
Okay.
5.
Any other trustee questions or comments in regards to this document? Or anything in general in this?
So if not, what we could do is we could go through the capital project process at a high level, because parallel to this being released, we'll talk about how you define your project scope. And that has to do with a number of factors being costs and what you want and need in the building. And then at the end of that discussion, you guys can, if there's any comments that come out of our questions, you can then move to release this if you so choose, or not. Really up to you guys at that point. But I do believe we have that already and prepared for that process to begin for you. So jumping in then to point C, I wanted to start with the high-level recap of the whole process. Now, we don't have your schedule on here. This is a high-level generic schedule for an overall project that's only months on top. Depending on the scope of your work, if you have to phase it, for instance, if you want to keep the library building open during a major renovation, how do you phase that? It might impact the construction timeline. Depending on how much into the details we go with the design team and how many options we have to look at, the design phase might be shorter or longer. But really, this kind of gives you a general rule of thumb that, right now you could basically be considered to be in month 2, where you've gone and done some of the project parameters. It'll probably continue on, month 3, but the design team selection process has started. You've got the RFQ draft form ready to go, and then we can get into the design phase once it's going. So with that being said, the project parameters and project scope is very key. So the next page in your board packet is what I'm assuming is CCS's page 2 for the update. It's steps in determining project scope at the top.
Page 42 in the packet.
Thank you.
Hey, Mark, I've got a question.
Yeah.
I'm kind of confused about the different months going across the project phases. I thought that month 10 would be like the end of our fiscal year, which would be June of 2021. But it sounds like, since, you're saying that we're already partway into board approval of project parameters. Is that correct?
You're in that process. And realistically, and this goes back to, this is the same screenshot that was from the December 2019 board. I didn't want to update it because we don't have everything finalized. Essentially, that board approval of project parameters, that's going to go 3 months at this point in terms of this thing. So it's going to overlap with design team selection. You don't have your project parameters nailed down yet. We don't know what your funding limitation might be that you want to spend. We might have an idea on some of the things you want to do with the building, but you haven't gone through the whole process. So what we're trying to do, instead of getting it all nailed down right now, we're trying to let you go through that design and selection process and get out ahead of things. So month 10 on this, getting back to your question, Liz, is whether that's June 2021 or not, we'll see over the next couple months as you get into your project parameters. But really, these dates are going to change.
Oh, and I understand that they're going to change, but I'm just saying I want to understand where we're going to be approximately at the end of our current fiscal year, and then the end of our next fiscal year, and relate that back to our budgeting and B&A cycle. So if I count the project phase budget month 1, I mean, are those months across the top, or am I mistaken?
They are months. So where I would go on this, you will be, if you're talking June 2021 being the close fiscal year, I would expect you to be in your design phase or finishing your design phase somewhere in the end of it, the tail end of it, at that point, if you were to release RFQ at this board meeting, let's say, going forward. And then the following end of fiscal year, so that would be June of 2021, if we're going in that same process, you'd be somewhere in, within construction phase. Does that make sense?
It does. I just thought, if you count September as month 1 and month 10 would be June of 2021. And that's where I would draw our fiscal year line. And the reason that I'm being so picky about this is this relates back to our later on approval of the B&A and whether or not we have the right amount of money moving from one account to the other. So
Sure.
I'm trying to get, okay, what do we need in which account by which fiscal year? And I'm trying to figure out, do we need more by the 13th month? Because that's when the design phase ends. But to me, that's going to be like, if we're going to be done with that by June, then we actually need to move more money sooner. Because if you're telling me that that's going to be part of fiscal year that ends June 2021, then we do need to move more money sooner. That's my problem. How do I link up the two to the best of my ability, given that we're going to be in this meeting approving to the best of our knowledge? I know things change, but we're going to have to reconcile it given the information we have today.
So we can look at it in terms of how much you have in your capital reserves. Because really that's what you're going to be using, I would expect, for a capital improvement project, including the design phase. And when you look at again, we don't know what your approval for a budget would be, whether it's 2 million or 10 million or more, whatever that it might be for the building. So at a high level, let's say you're going to spend 10% plus or minus on professional fees, consultants and things of that nature at a very high level. If your project budget, I'm using round numbers, it's just for me to make it easy for myself as I'm talking. If you say 10 million, that means there's $1 million for professional fees. It is not going to be all expended ahead of construction because those professional fees will continue through construction. Which means that $1 million on a $10 million project, again, very high numbers, would be high level numbers. You're not going to expend all of that in first fiscal year.
And I did consult with CCS in regards to our future conversation about the B&A. So I did try to gauge.
So Liz, to answer your question, if you look at your reserves and you have more than it's called $1 million in there, which I do believe you do.
We have 3.8 million, and in our B&A, we're looking to move potentially the max would be 1 million. And I've drawn my fiscal year line at the 10th month, meaning everything to the right is going to be July of 2021 and beyond. So in the B&A that we're approving later on today, it would be everything to the left of the 10th month. So like design phase, half of it gets, because you pay as you go, I'm assuming, half of it gets paid in what we're approving for the B&A, and then maybe about 3 or 4 months gets paid going forward.
Right.
So that's the correct assumption,
Yes.
which means what we're approving in the B&A is sufficient.
Yes.
Because if that's not the correct assumption and that line moves, especially if it moves to the right, then we have to think twice about what we're setting up the B&A for.
That's a very good point. Actually, that's the business logic that you're on the right path there. So really the only way that line would move to the right would be if you did a smaller project. At that point, you already have, what, 3 million in your reserves?
3.8.
Yeah, the only way to move that line far enough to the right to have that impact it would be to have a project that fits within that 3 million range. So you know where you
or to delay.
Well, that line would move
To the right.
So if you delay it, that means you're not starting construction. Moving to the right means it goes into construction.
Correct.
And that's when money, that's when a lot of money starts flowing.
Yeah,
And if you're planning, you're not spending that money.
If you just think about construction and furniture and fittings and things of that nature, that's probably what Mark's saying is about 90% of the expenditure. So you're not going to start doing that until, as you look at Mark's chart, until either the 15th or 16th month. So if you kind of think of it in that way, no matter what size the project is, typically that's the right sort of percentage that you're looking at.
So in the way that I've got it marked, that potentially could start about October 2021, if everything stays on schedule. And then I guess what I would look for you guys to come back with is, given where our money stands now and given about what we're going to spend in the design phase, depending upon our parameters, when do we need to look at submitting applications for financing?
So actually had that same question out and had reached out to PMA to get some sense of that. We should have that by the next board meeting once the parameters as part of this RFQ process come in. But essentially there's going to be, I'll call it 3 stages to that process. One stage would be, this, as you just said, putting together an application for it, right? The second stage would be going out and figuring out, okay, where's the release of that information, and then hopefully funding of any sort of financing. And the third phase would actually be getting that money so you can use it. So we'll have that all outlined in a plan once we know that really that right now there's no direction yet to go out and finance money. So we would, if there is a direction to do that, we'll actually put that into a schedule as an owner schedule for you.
Right, I'm just thinking 5-year plan type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry for the interruption.
No, it's fine. That's the business side of this that needs to be thought through. So it's good. So going to that page 42 would be the steps in determining project scope. And we wanted to lay this out just so you saw kind of how this would work with an RFQ. So based on the December 2019 preliminary project definition, we had these points A through F of the things that you as a board thought were important to input or consider for a project. And depending on how you want to go about doing a project, whether you want to stay in your existing footprint or potentially expand with a small addition or something of that nature, these square footages and areas would be played with by a design team to fit it in your building. Same thing for the exterior improvements. We talked about things like a drive-up window, exterior enclosure renovation, landscaping. And then the third part of it would be COVID-19 impact on building design, whether you need to look at additional storage space or more flexible space realistically, not designing just for COVID. All of these things are going to be done as part of a conceptual development of the package. But what we need to do during the architectural selection process is define what options you want that architect team to investigate as part of their concept design. So, we want to make sure that we're capturing all of them on here. One thing that I heard loud and clear a little while ago, I think it was Trustee Bartelli, was that FQC parameters really should be on this list as well. What I'd like to do, if there is a movement to go in towards a capital improvement project and start the RFQ process at your next board meeting, which would be in the middle of that process, we present a page document that summarizes all these and allows the board to look at this and say, yes, we want that included, or no, we need this one, or we also need this one included, or how do we change it? But I want to get you guys thinking about that now so that next board meeting you kind of have those in your thoughts. And if you have any questions based on seeing this right off the cuff that I can go and research before the next board meeting, feel free to fire away, and we can start doing that now and then really jump ahead and get going in that process for you. But then, so you're aware, what we'd be doing with the design team once they're on board would be having them go through that concept development. We'd probably have them look at multiple options so that we can provide you cost options. And then at that point, when that's all kind of in the packaged report, because you're going to have a couple board meetings during that design development or that concept development phase, we'll package everything and we'll present. There'll be a presentation to the board to decide what project moves forward. And that's where you align the schedule, the costs, and the scope during that process. Once that's aligned, then there's a whole other kick through of design that will go through its design development. That's the DD in the bottom. You have DD review and approval that goes obviously to the board. You guys would have another update on the presentation, see where things are, see where costs are going, there'd be a cost estimate, and we can fine tune it a little bit more. If that gets approved from that stage, then we go into construction documents. They get developed, there'd be some board meetings, you'd probably have some intermittent input onto that process, and then you have another review and approval stage. So there's multiple iterations here that the board would have input on. They'd have a review phase, and then you go forward during that, whether it's 9 months or 12-month process, that's called design phase. And I wanted to lay this out because at the last board meeting, there was a question of when does the board get the input and how do we do that? So that's really what this document was. Any questions there?
Or is there any feedback on section 1? Or do we want to wait?
Well, we would discuss, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt Director Weinstein. When in section 1, there'll be something we would discuss in more detail later on. It's not something we have to discuss right now, right?
No, it's not something you have to discuss right now, but if you see something glaring that is missing to you or that we really need to do some research on before your next board meeting, it'd be great to hear that now, at least as a heads up, this is a red flag. I want this one talked about, and we can start doing that research now.
Because we're anticipating the next board meeting to have basically a parameters
Discussion.
page and then have a full discussion to really nail down what the board as a whole is looking to advance toward.
And it's really that purpose and that timing is to align it with an RFQ being released, so you can give your architect teams, the finalists, those parameters and say, this is what you're going to be working towards.
And Trustee Duffy's got a question, it looks like, or comment.
Let's go to the old raising of the hand now. So, this question is actually more for you, President Hummel, and so I'm looking for a little bit of direction here. So Mark, thank you for walking through that. But I feel like to go through that, I need to know, we've talked about a lot of different options on locations and all that stuff, right? But I think what I would like to know is, what are we doing moving forward, right? This is great because I think I almost feel like a special meeting should just be held. I know we all like our meetings, right? So another special meeting just going over that one pager to define that for you, because it probably requires a pretty good conversation between us. But I guess I'm just looking for some direction from you, President Hummel. I mean, I can give you my opinions now, which I have no problem ever doing. But I want to make sure that what we're trying to get accomplished within this section of this agenda.
I agree. I think the first section is going to be probably a lengthy discussion to see what we want to kick around, and probably a special board meeting is a good idea because Director Weinstein, correct me if I'm wrong, we have we got to pass we passed something in September, isn't it? Is it start the tax levy process?
We started.
Yeah. So, I mean, I remember when we began this over a year ago, I remember making the comment, we would probably be having special board meetings as this progressed. And now we're probably getting to that point where we would have to have special board meetings. So, I mean, I'll coordinate with Director Weinstein and obviously try to see what the trustees what works in their schedule, but probably a special board meeting isn't a bad idea to have because you're right, this is something that we need to discuss in depth without question. So, I mean, it's definitely possible. I mean, we could do it in a regular meeting too, but I would want to see what the rest of the agenda looks like, because if it's a pretty heavy agenda, it's probably something we're going to want to separate out so we could, all be, not be in a long meeting and be all fresh and have a long, lengthy discussion. So I probably am leaning towards a special board meeting. You were kind of reading my mind. And I was shaking my head yes when you were talking, but I agree. We are going to have a lengthy talk to make sure we're all on the same page and and where we're at on that. So yeah.
I mean, if I can offer one piece of commentary, then when I look at this document, and this maybe will help Mark and Graham, at least from my point of view, is I look at this as, well, I've let the decision-making process play out, right? We've vet everything, do the due diligence, and then at the end, what options you have, you go with it. I mean, I know Trustee Sullivan has hit on this point a few times about the urgency, right? To move with urgency, I think I don't want to put words in Trustee Sullivan's mouth, but I'm seeing the shaking of the head, yes. I mean, I'm prepared to say, if there are no other viable options now, I think what we're looking at is a renovation of our current space. And when I think of that, that now impacts what I'm going to have my opinions on related to this one pager that, Mark, you were kind of going through, right? Because some of it may not be as viable as it would be in other spots. But I think that that's important. And I guess I'm just leading with that, is that it sounds like that's where we have now landed. I kind of feel like I want clarification. Is that kind of all landed on now?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much, I mean, it looks like there's nothing going on for us in downtown, so it's pretty much, this is where we're at. So there's probably no other options at this point.
And I think that the question about renovation, on our footprint, it can be within our footprint, it can be expansion, it can be addition, and that's all dependent on the parameters that the board agrees to. Right?
The parameters the board agrees to and the costs that you want to invest into the building at this point. And that's really where it's the balance between the two. Because you want to make sure that you don't have a situation where you have champagne taste and a beer budget. So that's where that process really is. Let's make sure that they're aligned. So going back to Trustee Duffy's questions, realistically, you've gone and done your due diligence and looking downtown. You can continue waiting for that. But if, like last board meeting, really there was a direction to include in the RFQ document in a renovation and addition project. But at that point, that's what we have on the table here. So if that gets the push to go towards renovation and addition, the next step then would be to figure out the budget and figure out the scope that aligns to that budget, which we can do in that special meeting that you guys mentioned potentially having, or in regular if you guys wanted to have that.
Mark, what do you need from us to mail out this RFQ for renovation and addition project tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.? Not to be pushy.
Probably need another day or two just to make sure the library can get it into the papers. But that being said, I would think a motion to release the RFQ would be needed.
Okay, I move.
Well, wait, hang on, Trustee, before I didn't mean to interrupt, but we don't have an action item. We don't need to make a formal, well, we can't make a formal, it's just direction, correct, Director Weinstein? Yeah, so Liz, or Trustee Sullivan, we don't have to vote on it. It just, the board will have to just give consent, because we don't have an action item. It's not a vote on this. When we
Okay, everybody know.
Oh, you just hit mute. Pardon?
Everybody knows where I stand.
Okay. Treasurer Norton, because I can't see you only on audio. Do you have any questions or comment? I'll come back to her. Any other trustee have a question or comment?
We do need it.
Vice President Bartelli, you got, it looks like you're.
President Hummel, so to summarize, what I'm getting out of this is we're going to adapt the conceptual development to a renovation.
Yeah, because that's like the only option we pretty much have right now.
And then, as what Trustee Duffy said, the priorities will change based on that than what we have here from the December 19th presentation.
Well, that's what we'll have to discuss exactly what we want.
I'm just asking the question. Yeah, we'll have to.
Yeah.
Did I hear anywhere in your discussions something to the effect, Mark, about should a developer come to us in the meantime? How that or will that affect what we're doing right now tonight? Because the last thing, in my opinion, that I want to see is if it seems to me we're ready to pull the trigger on a renovation and or addition. I would say that's a consensus right now. I thought I heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, something about in the future of another developer that might show any kind of interest in the library coming downtown.
So right now, there's no.
No, I understand now there is.
If they do, if one were to come during design phase, and that has happened on other projects, we can inform the board and the board can decide whether you want to entertain that at all or not. You know, if someone comes in and says, I'm going to give you $100 million and build you the Taj Mahal on the side, you might want to listen. But if someone says we're going to bring you through 6 months of back and forth, that maybe we'll get something, maybe we won't, it might be a different discussion. So we present any of that to the board. You know, it wouldn't hide anything, and you know, but at the same time, we'd lay out the options and say, do you want to pursue that and go down? You know, do you want to widen the path or not?
Okay, thank you.
Secretary Swistak, anything?
No, I'm on board with pursuing an addition or renovation at our current footprint, the current location.
Trustee Larson?
I'm, like what Emily said, I'm in agreement that we should renovate and, do an addition, and I think we should start the process as soon as possible. And
Karen, can't hear you.
Yeah, maybe lower your mask. I don't know where the microphone is by her, Director Weinstein.
Move it
You
over.
might be on mute. Yeah.
She's speaking.
Okay.
You want to repeat, Karen? Or?
yeah, sure.
Okay.
I agree that we should go ahead with the design process and do an addition and renovation to the building, and I think we should start sooner rather than later.
All right. And then Treasurer Norton, I believe you're back again. So did you have any, I don't know how much of the conversation you've heard. If you need any repeating, we could try to summarize, but do you have any question or comment?
No questions. The comment is, pretty in line with others have said that, open to expansion or improvement or both, depending on the, process that we proceed with.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So it looks like we're all good with having, moving forward on the RFQ then, to release that then? Okay.
And so, yeah, so with setting a date today, what I just ask is, as long as everyone's okay with it, I heard a couple times that you want to do it sooner rather than later, or right away. So realistically, I work with the director, and as soon as it could be published and released following Illinois state protocols, we would do that. In other words, if we can get in the paper for 3 days consecutively next week or whatever that is.
We'll put it on our website.
And it'll be,
Release the dogs.
yeah, I'll work with her to figure out logical dates that if it, say it releases on a Thursday, we'll give it a couple extra days and have it due back on Friday or on Monday. Something logical for businesses to see it, respond to it, and get it back to you. It might not be exactly 10 business days, but it'll be within that window, just so everyone sees it.
You get a lot of people responding?
Yes, so typically, we were actually looking at some old files for some recent projects, and there were over 30 interested firms, and one of the last ones, very similar to this. And I think just shy of 15 actually submitted. And that was in a market where people were a bit busier, or at least, we didn't have the COVID thing where there was some impact. I was talking to Graham, I think you expect even hotter and heavier right now.
Yeah, I'm expecting more than that to come in with qualifications. The marketplace is such at the moment that people are very, very keen to get a workload for next year. And I think, just off the top of my head, I think you'll probably have at least 20 submissions, and they may come from as far afield as New York. I've had that before. There are companies out there now that as soon as you release it in the newspaper, they send it out to every architect that they know and all the builders that they know. And it really is, it's kind of a mass mailing system now. As soon as you just put your foot in the water, the ripple goes, and I think we'll get an awful lot of responses.
Then how do we whittle that down?
So the process that we follow is the same one, and so everyone can look back at it from last month's, if you have any questions on it.
Okay.
But what we do is we get the responses in, we sit down with the director, and we do a qualification check and assign them into, okay, have they done libraries before? Have they done local libraries before? And basically score them based on those categories that you've seen. It says pages, I know my
Yeah,
pages, it's 6 and 7, yeah. And be using those. We will it down to who we do qualifications checks with. So that might be, it depends on where the break is. It might be 5 or 5, 6, 7, something of that nature. We call, checking our qualifications, making sure that's right. That's what that qualifications line, check line is. And then from there, once we get down to finalists, we actually bring them in. The board would have an opportunity to go and visit their buildings that they've done. And then you'd bring them in for an interview with the board. And the board would score them at that point, at that meeting, at the end of it. And then you guys would decide whether you want to move forward with the highest scoring firm or not.
And then that will definitely probably be a special board meeting when we go through that process with the scoring and interviewing. I'm sorry, it was Trustee Larson speaking. I apologize if I interrupted.
Do they also present like a design concept when they do this? I mean, it doesn't have to be like firm and in stone, but some kind of like.
Graham and I were talking about that actually, and one of the.
To look at.
They kind of respond to our request, what we want them to do, and we make it a pretty clear agenda because we want to adjudicate on a level footing. So we give each one the same, we list out what we're looking for, and each will use their interpretation, come forward and do a presentation. And there's the content of that presentation, there's how they present. Are you able to interact with that particular, do you like him? Is or is he belligerent? I mean, is there chemistry? Yeah, I mean, is there a good fit? Some architects are good at doing boxes. Some are a little bit better at looking a little bit more architecturally pleasing. Some are just very basic. Some others just do all bright colors everywhere and you get a great interior design, but on the outside, not so good. We've got all of those factors to consider. And whatever suits your project best and whatever you're most comfortable with is your final choice. There is no good and bad. It's what's most suitable for you, most suitable for your project, and you feel you'll get what you want from that particular company better than the others.
Well, it's like they're different, unique, individual. It just depends what you're looking for, what you want to spend.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but you'll start out, and my guess is you probably have 20 or more. That'll get whittled down because there's some that have never done the library that submit. They'll just throw their qualifications in. So you get that down, and then you'll be able to look and see and give them some difficult questions, and some questions that are relevant to your project, and see how they come forward with that. And then that'll get down to 2 or 3 that will come in one evening and present to the whole board. Mark will give you a score sheet that you will agree ahead of time on what the most important factors are. You will agree on the agenda so that everybody will know what you're going to be seeing and how you're going to mark it. And hopefully at the end of that evening, you will have an architect that you're happy with, be able to do an excellent job on your project within budget and everything else that you design.
So planning ahead, and just, you guys all heard that, what we would do, there could be a special meeting or a regular meeting on the parameters of the project scope. But at your next regular board meeting, since that would fall basically in the middle of the qualification process, is when CCS, if you're here with it, would present a potential scoring scheme that you guys could review and approve. and potential agenda or draft agenda for that presentation interview so that you guys could have input on what questions are being asked, the style of presentation, what they're going to be presenting you, review and approve that, and then after that meeting would be a perfect timing to kind of whittle it down to the finalists and release it out. So they come back to you probably in another special meeting. You might have 3 meetings here in short order.
At the end of the day, it's your choice, your selection. We'll give you guidance. We'll give you our knowledge of the library market, what they've done previously, and how we see different companies, because we deal with a lot of them regularly. But it's your choice, and that's the important thing. You're the ones that will have a building that will be your building for X number of years. You need to make sure you're picking the right company.
Okay. All right. So if there's not any other questions or comments, Mark, do you have anything else, or is that pretty much it?
No, I think I got the directions. So we'll come prepared. We'll be on standby to get any notes about the special board meeting, and we'll also present those. The next RFQ document set for the next board meeting, so you guys can review those.
And then Director Weinstein and I will coordinate probably with you and obviously the rest of the trustees if and when. Well, we'll definitely have to have some special board meetings here in the upcoming months, but we will we'll try to get a schedule together with besides our normal business this now too. So we'll be working on that. So all right, thank you. Oh, sorry, Graham.
Take a comment. If we've had any letters from interested parties, architects who are interested in doing the design, we need to include those, make sure that they're aware that this is going out. So if you've got anything on file that says, hey, we're interested in architecture, just send the letter over to Mark or just tell him the company. We'll make sure that they are aware that there is an RFQ out there to go to your website. So, and we'll probably do that with some companies that are known for library projects. So, and if anybody's got any companies out there that they want to notify, either you can notify them and say, go to our website, or you can tell Mark and Mark will talk to them and say, you know, if you want to submit a qualification. It's a public process.
Yeah, I think actually in the RFQ, it says not to connect with the trustee.
Yeah, I was gonna say, with all due respect, I'd rather the trustees not do that. I'd rather just keep it like just with the regular notice and what have you. So but thanks. All right, well, if nothing else on that topic. We can move on. The next item on the agenda is.
Hey, President Hummel, I have a favor to ask.
Sure.
You made a statement about how we might in the next months need like extra meetings. Can you restate that to say in the next weeks? We may need extra meetings.
Well, I was saying, well, we're going to have extra meetings starting
right.
the next months to come. I could see the next.
No. Yeah. Weeks to come.
Weeks to months to come, we will have extra meetings.
It starts with a W. Weeks. I know it's hard, but weeks.
All right. We will be meeting more often, put it that way. And it'll be sooner rather than later, I'm sure. All right, next item on the agenda is staff reports.
Thank you, Mark Rogers and Graham.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Graham.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is staff reports. Is there any, well, first the director, do you have anything to add to your director's report, or should I just open up the questions and comments?
I just have a couple of things. So in my director's report, I do walk through the tentative budget appropriation. We'll get to that under new business, the same with the policy work there. I do want to mention that summary is going well. On average, it's about 2/3 less for the kids this year and about 1/4 less for the adults. However, we pivoted with the program to the pick up and go kits, and those have been going very well. Where Youth Services has distributed 394 adventure kits, which was a 125% increase, and Adult Services has distributed 168 take and make craft kits, which is an 86% increase from last month. So in that, we've lost some online book loggers. We've gained some with the curbside pickup patrons. And most of the July kits and take and make craft kits have been distributed via the curbside pickup program. And then just a reminder that summer read concludes on August 24th, so there's still a couple weeks there left. And then just wanted to mention something about the blood drive. At the last minute, Versity Illinois Blood Center contacted the library about hosting a blood drive in honor of a Lisle resident and District 202 alum Marcus Valentine, who died very recently from sickle cell. And 36 people registered to give blood, and 27 were able to donate on that day, which was on Saturday, July 25th. And according to the Versity representative, those 27 donations saved 80 lives. And I just thought that was important to mention here in the meeting. And I think it was a good program. And there's a photo in the board packet if you wanted to take a look at what the van looked like in our parking lot. And we will be working with Versity again in the near future for maybe a fall blood drive. And then I did send the board a legal note about November 3rd from our attorney, and that there's some legislation out there that states that November 3rd will be a state holiday, and then denotes that all government offices, with the exception of election authorities, shall be closed. But I know that there were some questions in the regarding this law, so our attorney will keep us alerted to that fact. And then just a quick note that the library in Lisle had its first tornado warning this past Monday, and everybody, we did make some announcements over the intercom, and a lot of people heeded that announcement and left the building to get home safely, but we did have 5 remaining patrons in the building, and we did usher them into our shelter. We kept 6-foot social distance. It wasn't the easiest to do, but all of the staff performed great. Everybody brought their walkie-talkies, their backpacks, and we stayed in there for about a half hour until there was an all clear, and went back to regular business. That's my report.
All right. Is there any questions or comments on the director's report?
President Hummel, I have one.
Go ahead, Vice President Bartelli.
Yes, for the director. I noticed in accounts payable, our contribution to the Lisle Park District for the movie evening. What other intergovernmental agencies contributed towards that?
That was the Village of Lisle, the School District 202, of course, the Park District, the Fire
Township.
District.
And the
You said the township.
The township.
township, yep. Fire district, village. There's at least a half a dozen. Go ahead.
I assume the contributions were split or whatever.
Yeah, evenly split.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Treasurer Norton, did you have a question or a comment on the director's report or no?
No questions, just thanks.
Okay. All right, moving on, the assistant director's report. Beth, do you have anything else to add, or is it just want me to open up the questions and comments?
Comments?
Any questions or comments on the assistant director's report?
Vice President Bartelli has a question for Beth.
Mhm.
You mentioned that supply issues continue for PPE. Is that we're getting them as we need it? We get the supplies as needed?
Yes, we just have to be, stay on it every week, looking to see what we need so that we're placing our orders ahead of time. Because normally when we place orders, they come within the week, but sometimes with the PPE, we're waiting 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's really fluctuated, and we're working on kind of a trend report, internal trend report to see which departments need what. It's not ready yet. We're still working on it, but just to gauge for the rest of the year. And again, everything's so fluid now in terms of what's happening with COVID and the ups and the downs, but we want to keep a consistent supply.
Thank you.
Anyone else with a question or comment for the Assistant Director? Treasurer Norton, do you have a question or comment on the Assistant Director's report?
Thank you for checking, President Hummel. No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else, we will move on to new business. Can I have a motion for 9A, approve LLD policy 716?
This is Secretary Swistak. I move to approve LLD policy 716, outstanding check measures.
This is
This is
Sullivan. I'll
Trustee
second.
Duffy, I second.
I'll give it to Trustee Duffy. Secretary Swistak, you want me to hand this one off to Director Weinstein, or do you want to
Yep,
take?
it's a
Okay.
new policy. I'll have Director
Direct-
Weinstein explain it.
Okay,
Okay, so there's a new policy. There is a, in all the policies, there's a strikeout version and clean version for easier reading. So this is a new policy that our auditor, Lauterbach and Amen, recommended. They provided the template and we adjusted the language. We did have procedures regarding outstanding checks, but never had written policy, so we drafted this one per LNA. And there was an outstanding question from the committee discussion regarding out-of-state vendors, and the answer is that all outstanding checks go to the state unclaimed division, regardless of the vendor location. And we checked with our financial advisor. And that's it.
any questions or comments on this policy? Treasurer Norton, question or comment on this policy?
Nope, looks good. Thank you.
All right. Can we have a roll call, please?
Emily Swistak,
Aye.
Thomas Duffy,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan,
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Karen Larson,
Aye.
Jenny Norton,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is 9B, approve LLD policy 605, emergency closure of library. May I have a motion, please?
This is Secretary Swistak. I move to approve LLD policy 605, emergency closure of library.
Motion and a second, please.
Trustee Duffy, I second.
Okay. Director Weinstein, you want to probably handle this one too?
Sure. So this is our general emergency closure policy, and this new draft fleshes out our current policy, which was not only short but incomplete. This covers all types of emergencies, those being a flood or snowstorm or pandemic, in general terms. And the one modification that came from committee was to sync up the introduction portion that refers to consultation guidelines to the notification portion in number 1 of the policy. So I hope that was accomplished in this draft, and it's for your consideration.
Any questions or comments on this policy? Treasurer Norton, question or comment on this policy?
I mean, it's so small. I'm sorry, I'm going to bring it up, but in this is 605 we're talking about, right?
Yep.
Okay, so in the big first paragraph, the last words, length of closure period shall be evaluated by director in consultation with board president. I just wasn't sure why we didn't say the in front of director and board president like it is in other places. And I'm sorry, I just wanted to prove that I read it carefully.
That's fine.
That's fine.
You don't sound very sorry, Treasurer Norton.
Director Weinstein or Secretary Swistak, you want we go okay with that, or is it fine as is?
We can add the. That's for the board to agree to, and we can amend the motion with the added modification.
All right. Do we have to make an amendment? Is this a scrivener correction,
So-
or do we make an
But then
amendment?
I would need
Okay.
to make an amended motion.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so I move to approve LLD policy 605, emergency closure of library as amended.
Okay.
Trustee Duffy, I
Martin
second.
I think I'll give it to Trustee Duffy still. I think he just got in. At least he started first. Any other questions or comments on this policy? Should just housekeep, should Secretary Swistak maybe withdraw the original motion first? Or
No,
is it
I made a new
I'll make
motion
an
as
amendment.
amended,
Okay,
so I think
okay.
we're covered.
Then we're fine. Okay. If there's no other questions or comments, roll call, please.
Emily Swistak,
Aye.
Thomas Duffy,
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Karen Larson,
Aye.
Jenny Norton,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is 9C, adopt LLD policy 606, public health response. Can I have a motion, please?
This is Secretary Swistak. I move to approve LLD policy 606, public health response.
A second.
Trustee Duffy, I second.
Righty. Does Director Weinstein or Secretary Swistak want to?
I can walk through because there.
Sure, go ahead.
There are some modifications that will be recommended. So this is an entirely new policy. The committee believed it was timely and specific. It's timely and specific to widespread epidemics that affect every library's operation, as well as patron and staff and the overall community health. A lot of the documentation came straight from the actions that the library implemented as of March 13th, as well as some of the best practices shared by other libraries during Zoom calls and such. We used some of that information in the first draft. Also reviewed a number of general online disaster policies to assist the language in this policy. Policy 606 would come directly after the LLD closure policy that we just approved. And the committee agreed to change the policy title to public health response as opposed to what it was before. And I think that best captures what we are outlining here in the policy. The policy has 4 categories, those being readiness measures, communication actions, operational adjustments while open during a pandemic, and lastly, operations when temporarily closed. There was also an addendum to consider regarding what many refer to as a travel ban policy, and we've added that to line item number 3 under the letter L. And I think President Hummel would like to make a recommendation to enhance this item, and I also have an enhancement to suggest when we get to that point.
Okay.
So unless there's discussion about items 1 through 2, we can move on to 3, but I'll open it up to the board.
So does any, well, I guess we'll do it that way because that's probably easiest. Anybody with any comments or questions on 1 and 2, which is readiness measures and communication to public, LLD board and staff, or is everybody good with that part?
Good.
Good. So then in part 3, the last one, 3LC, which is eligible employees should utilize PTO for the 14-day quarantine and any combination of vacation or sick time. I'm not going to read the, sorry?
There's a new law regarding the vacation or sick time. I know my daughter received an email from their company if they do travel to a hotspot. And they have to quarantine that if they do not have any more vacation time or PTO. I can't think of, I'd have to look it up in your email, something through the federal government. And I've read several articles on it that you have to do it through your job or company, that you are paid for like 2 weeks, something like that. I can't, would actually have to go back to her email and find out the name of it. There is a specific law that applies to this.
Is it for traveling or is it if the
They
state?
travel to say, I'm gonna go to Wisconsin for a week, and I'm gonna come back. I can't come back, it's a state that's a hot spot. So you have to quarantine, you have to, like, in the case of her company, they have to quarantine for 14 days, they have to have a test, they have to have a written copy saying that they're tested negative before they can even step foot back into the company. But, there's a special law. I can't think of the name of that. I didn't, like I said, I didn't.
Is there any way that we can find out what applies to libraries?
So we did communicate with HR Source, and that was for those of you who remember Management Association, same company, for advice on creating this policy. And in discussions with the department heads as well as with Assistant Director McCullen, we want to make doubly sure. I don't think necessarily we pass this tonight. I think we should have our attorney review this, but as far as HR Source goes, they do have legal they have attorneys on staff there, and they mentioned that libraries may write a policy that refers to staff PTO, and it's up to us to determine what that is. This is a very general recommendation, and we're not the only library who's looking at this policy, though I don't think there are many out there that have been adopted as of yet. Everything is very new right now. So I think having a discussion about this policy is good. We have our attorney review it. I will say, so I don't know, President Hummel was discussing, I don't know.
I didn't get to my point yet, but I don't know if you have anything else to add, follow up with Trustee Larson or like.
Well, there are a number of, I think, acts that have passed regarding, did you find it?
No, I'm looking for it.
There are some.
Oh, FFCRA.
She said FFCRA. You know the acronym?
The one that we were familiar with was the Families First Act, but that did not discuss travel.
Right. Families First, I believe, it refers to if there's a shelter in place within your state, and then that the employer is obligated to pay for any time away from work. But that's, I don't think refers to if the employee chooses to travel to a hotspot. Again, I think it merits running this by our attorney. If the rest of the board agrees.
So you want us to maybe not pass this tonight or just pass it?
Well, I think there's more to discuss here. I mean, get to your
Sure.
point, and
All
I do
right.
have.
So I'll get to my point then. So in relation to 3LC, we should add another one, probably D, I would probably argue, or add another bullet point for trustees. If one of us travels to a hotspot, that we should probably, do our meetings or do the trustees should be remote. Like I've been actually, because I just came back from South Carolina, I think on August 1st. So that's actually the main reason I've been remote for the Personnel Policy Committee meeting last week and remote tonight instead of being in the library like I've been in the past. So I figured, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So I kind of been out of the library for the past couple of weeks, so I haven't been going in. So I think we should probably add a bullet point in here somewhere, just for the traveling to the hotspots, like for 14-day period for trustees. I don't know if anybody agrees with that, or what's everybody think about that? I see a lot
The
of head
Secretary
shaking.
Swistak, I
Yeah.
agree with that. Adding that in for trustees, I think that's a good point.
Okay.
Can I make
But
one
to-
modification?
Sure.
And it's not, I think we should word it as not a 14-day quarantine we should just label it as, you know, the appropriate quarantine based on the recommendations of health officials or whatever you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Because what if it's a 21-day quarantine
Mm-hmm.
and ours is 16? So I would remove the quantifier.
Sure.
Good point.
Tom, we're going to quarantine you for 21 days.
Yeah, and you know, officially, I don't think there's technically a quarantine order. I know the city of Chicago has
Yeah.
one, but we're not in city. But I figured I'd go above and beyond and just play it safe.
And again, that's what HR source said we can do. We can go above and beyond.
Yeah.
A recommendation from staff was to change the language from government/public health agency to either state or CDC, if that is favorable to the board.
Is it, Director Weinstein, just so I could find it quick, what, is it a addition or is it a change to a bullet
It's
point?
a phrase from under L, the first sentence, there's
Okay.
government/public health agencies, instead of changing it to state or CDC or state/CDC. To be a little bit more clear.
I would say government,
Say state/federal public health agencies.
Federal.
State,
Yeah.
see, I think it said state or federal.
Yeah.
Do you want to add local? Because county public health department too. Do you want to make it federal, state, and local?
I would.
Okay.
Duffy.
Okay, and then the other recommendation that we did not discuss in committee was to make an exception for those who can provide an official negative test document upon return or within a time frame of return. Can we put something in there? And the reason this got brought up is that we are putting into policy something that does have ramifications for staff in terms of pay. So if someone's out of their PTO time, they won't be paid. So if they can prove that they have tested negative, is that something that the board would be open to having another bullet point that says exceptions may be made for those who can provide an official negative test document upon return, or something to that effect?
Well, didn't we as a committee kind of shy away from testing, or is this a little slight difference to it now?
Well, this isn't requiring people to test.
Okay, so it's
Offering, if a person does travel out and can provide a test, which now takes, I think, a few days to receive results on,
mhm.
can they then return with that document?
Well, the only concern I would have though is, at least in this, now, like I said, we got to remember every pandemic is different. So I know, this is based off what's going on now, but this policy is also for what may happen at some other time. The only concern with that though is you could test negative. My understanding with the current pandemic is you could be negative one day, then the next day you could test positive. So
It's true. I mean,
yeah.
this is what, okay, so I will say, in my conversations with staff, when they read the draft, and as with any policy, there is no way we can account for every scenario.
Correct. Yeah.
This policy, I would say the spirit of this policy is to ensure that we have a healthy organization here. And we're doing the best we can to ensure that we are providing a healthy space for everyone. So, though we cannot account for everything, I think we should consider it. If not, I mean, we don't have to. I just want to put that out there that there's no way we can, again, account for every scenario. Though if it's affecting staff being in the building and being paid, is there a way for staff to prove that they're okay to come back?
All right, so what's everybody feel about what the director or staff is proposing? Are we in favor of it, or I don't know, I'll go around the horn. I'll start with Secretary Swistak. Oh, you're on mute, or I can't hear her.
You can't hear me?
Oh, now I hear you. I got you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm seeing both sides of it, because I understand that it's talking about employees' pay, and that's a big deal. My concern is also with what President Hummel said with false negative tests, or you might be negative one day and be positive the next day. Also with asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic carriers. With the current situation, it makes me a little nervous that we would be able to say, yeah, you know what, you're asymptomatic and you got a negative test today, so you can come to work before that 14 days. And then, they're there and they've potentially spread it to people. And then, oh, wait, now I have symptoms and now I test positive. And so that's my concern with the current pandemic that we're in, is just those precautions. So that's where I'm coming from. I get it that it's a pay issue for staff, but I'm concerned about the potential community spread without knowing that it's happening. So that's my piece.
All right, thank you. Trustee Sullivan.
Can I listen to everybody else?
Yep, that's sure, it's fine. Treasurer
Thank you.
Norton.
I'm with Liz.
Oh, you okay? Okay. Vice President Bartelli.
I totally agree with Secretary Swistak, but I think I'm leaning with our director that there's no way we can account for every single scenario. As Secretary Swistak noted, when it comes to pay, very difficult decision. So I would lean towards not being able to account for every scenario. Thank you.
Trustee Larson.
I'm in agreement with like Emily and with Marjorie.
Okay. Trustee Duffy.
Yeah, I think my comment was the same when we met as a committee, which is that I think right underneath this bullet, there is the M, establish new procedures as required and needed. I don't think getting prescriptive is necessary to do that. And in truth, it should be worked out between the staff member and he or she's manager and the director itself. So I feel comfortable just leaving it as is.
Okay.
I'll go Trustee Sullivan. So we've heard from everybody.
I think we need to allow the director some discretion. I don't know if, my question is, does the document as written allow Tatiana the discretion she needs? If it doesn't, I think we need to write it in. If it does, then I think we need to leave it alone.
All right. Director Weinstein, you want to?
It does, to letter M, I think that's why that's there. I just was sharing some feedback from staff who have read the draft. And so, I agree. I think, again, the spirit of this policy is to ensure the health of our organization. It's not about removing pay or time from staff. It's about making choices about traveling to declared areas or declared hotspots. And if there's a choice, then you make that choice. And if there's ramifications, there are ramifications. And then there is some flexibility under letter M with the director and discussing this with staff.
Okay.
Treasurer Norton.
I don't really have any strong leanings worth sharing.
Okay. So Director Weinstein, looks like you want to jump in.
Well, I do want to say, I would like to add the revised mentions here and then send this to our attorney just to make doubly sure if the board agrees with that. And then this
Yes, I do have a couple of just like tiny grammar things.
Trustee Sullivan, before we go to that, I just want to ask a bigger question for the director.
Sure.
So would it be better to pass the policy as is, how we're doing it now, and maybe have you ask the attorney about what you want to add to it, and then next month we can add that bullet point to this policy, or would you rather add that now and see what the attorney?
I don't want to ask the attorney to, regarding adding something. I want to make sure that the information in letter L is, kosher for our policy, basically.
Okay.
And although we have had HR source, we did use their advice, but I mean, it merits reviewing.
Okay.
Or we could pass a conditional upon our attorney's approval.
Well, it's probably, I'd rather just pass it then and then have you check with the attorney. If we have to modify it, then we can modify it next month. If not, we're fine. So I'd rather not put like a condition on it. It's probably, would you agree? It's probably best to just do it that way.
That's fine.
All right. So it's
So
back
can
to-
I interject?
Oh,
Can I just
sorry.
interject for a second?
Go
So
ahead.
my concern with that is that if it's not okay with the attorney and we've passed it, then staff is subject to this policy, even if it's not okay until we can vote on it again next month, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
That's probably, that's where I was.
So that's my concern. And I don't know how everyone else feels about it, but I would feel more comfortable, especially because we're not 100% sure that this is okay, is that I would withdraw my motion to pass it and we would just hold off and bring it forth next month after the directors had a chance to review it with the attorney. But I don't know how everyone else feels.
And again, I will say this, this is a 100% new policy, and because we are in a very fluid public health response situation, let's say a staff person chose to go tomorrow to a hot spot and hang out with 300 people at a party, I think I would definitely step in and kind of make an executive decision regarding that staff person.
And you would have the authority even without this policy to do that, you feel? I mean, you're okay. So I probably would lean in Secretary Swistak's direction with this then. I'd rather maybe wait till next month or whenever we meet next and pass it then after you've read it with the attorney. I mean, we could still have a discussion on this of what we need to tweak and add, if we need to tweak and add anything else, but does that sound like a good idea? What Secretary Swistak is proposing, to maybe just wait till next month to pass this?
I'm good with that.
So Vice President Bartelli agrees. Director Weinstein, are you in agreement with that too? I was just actually asked for staff opinion with that.
As far as the scenario I just brought up,
Yeah.
and enforcing a quarantine, I wouldn't make the executive decision regarding pay and things like that. I would just probably take the step that wouldn't affect the legal question we have here.
Sure.
And just enact something that is about the safety of the organization and the health of the organization. So just want to make it.
So you would be okay with us maybe pulling this and voting on it next month then?
Oh yeah, that was my original.
Okay. So Secretary Swistak, you're okay? I know Vice President Bartelli was okay with it. Secretary Swistak, is that the direction you want to go? Okay.
Yes.
I'll go with Trustee Sullivan for, well, actually, let me just ask everybody quick. Are you good with just waiting next month? I know Trustee Sullivan wanted to maybe make another suggestion on this, but big picture here for now. Are you good with voting on this till next month?
Sure.
Okay. Trustee Duffy?
Yes.
Trustee Larson? And Trustee Norton? You good with waiting till next month, Trustee Norton? Oh, I think she must be on baby duty right now. So we have at least a majority want to wait to vote on it next month. Trustee Sullivan, you had some suggestions on some minor changes, you said?
Yeah, these are real minor.
Mhm.
Under LC, I believe we might want to change the word or to and in any combination of vacation. Well, wait a minute. Any combination of vacation or sick time. Never mind.
Okay.
You got
All right.
combination of vacation and sick time or sick time. Yeah, I don't think it matters. Okay. The next one is at the very end of that sentence, just hyphenate 14-day.
We're
And
actually
then-
getting rid of the 14-day, Liz. We talked about how 14-day, remember that's what you said you were going to quarantine Tom for 21 days because we said it might be
Yes.
different for different pandemics.
Yeah.
So we were changing it to recommended by health organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're right. And then 4A, I was wondering if maybe we should put a period at the end of the 4A.
Yeah, there's not a
Yeah.
period. Yeah, so period. Okay.
Liz, you're
These are-
being like me.
Yeah.
I know.
All right. So,
I'm channeling you. And then 4B, again, this is where I'm going to channel Jenny. Do we want to put the word the in front of director?
Okay.
Like I said, all minor. That was it.
all right.
Okay,
And
so
then-
then
Oh,
do
go
I
ahead.
withdraw my motion? How does this work? Or do we
Yeah,
vote on it and we just say no? Like
Well,
what?
you could just withdraw your motion.
Okay.
Before we do that too, though, are we good with the director? We agree with federal, state, and local health agencies. And then are we okay with the director maybe coming up with some language in regards to trustees quarantining as well?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. And then the last two Liz changes or Trustee Sullivan changes we were good with as well. All right.
Yeah.
So Director Weinstein, if you want to make all those changes, and then if we're good with all this, actually, Trustee or Treasurer Norton, are you on? I don't know if you're on the line right now. If you are, do you have any questions or comments on this policy?
No, I'm good. I appreciated Liz's nod about the definite article.
Okay. All right. Then if we're good with all this, yeah, Secretary Swistek, if you want to withdraw your motion.
So this is Secretary Swistek, and I withdraw my motion to approve LLD policy 606, public health response.
Okay. And so that was all we need for that then, right, Director? It was just a withdrawal. So, okay. So we will bring that back. We'll have the director make the changes and also check with the attorney. Then we'll bring that back at our next meeting. The next item on the agenda is 9D, approve LLD policy 325, schedule of fines, fees, and financial transactions. Can I have a motion, please?
This is Secretary Swistek. I move to approve LLD policy 325, schedule of fines, fees, and financial transactions.
This is Trustee Duffy, I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Director Weinstein or Secretary Swistek, which I don't know which one you want to take this one.
I'll let the director take it.
Go.
So originally back in February, pre-pandemic time, this policy was on the personal policy agenda specifically to enhance item 3B where it discussed borrowing privileges. But however, since COVID-19 has affected every household and our entire economy, we think we thought it was appropriate time to discuss going fine-free, and many libraries have already gone fine-free. And some, most recently, like ourselves, have gone fine-free during the pandemic, and some have also continued to go fine-free. So in the packet, there's a list of libraries that submitted answers to a Rails survey. And of the 63 who submitted answers, 54 have gone fine-free or have already been fine-free. And about a third of those who answered said that they were temporarily going fine-free like us. But since the survey on July 7th, many of the temporaries are transitioning to a permanent fine-free model. And Downers Grove has most recently shifted from a temporary to a fine-free forever model. So again, that begs the question about revenue and how much do you lose when you go fine-free? Well, 3 years ago, the LLD, we garnered approximately $40,000. And then 2 years ago, it was between 35 and 38. And then just this past fiscal year, the library pulled in $17,000. And the reason it declined is because we did put forth the automatic renewal. So our numbers basically already been cut in half in terms of revenue. I have had staff look into other sources of revenue pre-pandemic, such as like the passport program. And then post-pandemic, we've also looked into selling hunting and fishing licenses, selling logo branded materials such as t-shirts and mugs. And then we would continue to look into the passport program. Also, something else that was discussed in committee was looking towards the Friends of the Library and asking for a percentage of the book sale. And then most recently, the license plate stickers. That's another source where we can sell and potentially make some revenue there. And we're on our way to implement and look into that program through the Secretary of State. We did research some other things like selling garbage stickers or stamps, but with those particular items, you can only sell them at face value. But we will continue to look into other revenue generating sources. So regarding this updated policy, at first we do have the introduction that explains eliminating overdue fines does not mean there aren't any financial consequences, such as replacement costs for damaged or lost items, etc. There continue to be fines and fees on materials.
In 5 minutes, the library will close and computers will be shut down.
So there will be still.
Be sure to check out all materials before leaving the building.
Fines if this policy passes tonight. And then number one, under number one, we have the expectations under the fine-free model. Under number two, we have the number two documents, the schedule of fines and fees. And under number three, it discusses the borrowing privileges. Under number four, it talks about ILL fees. Number five discusses reciprocal fees. And then number six is reworded and it's about credit card use. And then number seven discusses waivers. So I've talked a lot, and if there's any questions, we can take those.
Any Secretary Swistek, you have anything to add or no? Okay. Any questions or comments from any of the trustees in regards to this policy?
No.
No.
I think we make a motion and then we
We already have a
we already
motion.
move. Okay.
Yeah, we already have a
Okay.
motion at the table, so yeah.
Okay. My point, and I know it won't be popular, is, and this is just a sign of the times. People used to make kids in particular responsible for their fines and responsible for returning books on time. And I know when we go fine free, it takes that opportunity away from parents to make the kids really be responsible for returning books on time, etc. So I don't really like a policy such as this, my personal opinion.
Treasurer Norton, do you have any question or comments on this policy?
No, thank you.
All righty. Any other questions, comments from any of the trustees?
I just wanted to speak to Trustee Sullivan's point. I understand what you're saying, but for example, sometimes my kids have turned in materials late because they can't get to the library by themselves. They're dependent on me or my husband to take them there. And so it hasn't, for us, it hasn't been an issue of, okay, well, you're the one responsible for it because you checked it out. So it's late, you have to pay for it. It's wait, we have to make sure that we have all the stuff so that when we go to the library together, then we're able to return it. So it hasn't been the situation that you're describing from my personal experience. So to me, that's not something that's on the child, especially younger children who can't get themselves to the library themselves. That's more on the parents or the guardians, who are in effect the ones responsible for the materials they check out anyway, because they sign off on the library card if a kid has their own library card. So that's kind of where I'm coming from as far as that goes, just based on my own personal experiences.
Director Einstein, do you have something to say? It looked like you were going to say something. Nope, you're good. Any other trustees, questions, comments? All right, then, guess we'll do roll call.
Emily Swistak,
Aye.
Thomas Duffy,
Aye.
Karen Larson,
Aye.
Jenny Norton.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan,
I think I'm frozen, but
Yeah,
nay.
yeah. Did you say yay?
No, I said nay.
Nay, okay.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye, motion passes. All righty, next item on the agenda is 9E, approve LLD policy 315, loan periods. Have a
This
motion,
is
please.
Secretary Swistak. I move to approve LLD policy 315 loan periods.
This is Trustee Duffy, I second.
All right, Director Weinstein, you want to take this one too?
Yeah, this is just the table that we publish on our website that discusses loan periods. And we took out
The library is now closed.
the column that
Good night.
indicates fines. I do want to say, I'd like to make an adjustment to number 2 here. It says LLD reserves the right to limit numbers of items and to shorten loan periods. I would like to change that to shorten/lengthen, because during this closure period or pandemic period, we have allowed for our DVDs to be holdable, and we've extended the loan period to 7 days. It used to be 2 days. So I think it makes sense to say either shorten or lengthen there. And if the board is agreeable to that, we can make an amended motion to move this forward. And this again just reflects the policy we just passed in terms of the table here.
Agree.
Any questions or comments from any of the trustees? Secretary Swistak, you're on mute.
I know I am because I have a little child in here that's bothering me.
Oh,
Who's saying he doesn't want to go to bed without me. So I was telling him, no, I can't right now. No, I think it makes sense to do the shorten/lengthen just because of what the director said.
okay. Any other questions or comments from any of the trustees? Treasurer Norton? Have a question or
I'm good.
comment? Good, okay. Do you need us, so we're good, do we need to make a little tweak or change, or is it just do we have to make an amended motion for that little tweak? Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I move to approve LLD policy 315 loan periods as amended.
Okay.
Trustee Duffy, I second.
Okay. All right, if there's no other questions or comments, we will have roll call, please.
Emily Swistak,
Aye.
Thomas Duffy,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan,
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Karen Larson,
Aye.
Jenny Norton,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is 9F, approve tentative budget and appropriation ordinance. Can I have a motion, please? Can I have a motion to pass the B&A, please?
Vice President Bartelli,
Okay.
I motion to approve tentative budget and appropriation ordinance B&A.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Trustee Duffy, I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Director Weinstein, do you?
I have a little introduction, just so it's in the public record. The Budget and Appropriation Ordinance, or more commonly known as the B&A, is an ordinance that the Illinois taxing districts must adopt in order to spend the funding the library receives. The budget column shows the board-approved expenditure categories, and the appropriation column shows the district's authorization to expend funds for any necessary obligations that extend beyond budgeted categories. So when the library develops the budget, we use vendor estimates and internal projected costs and ideas for future expenditures. And then when we draft the appropriation, we adjust the allowance per new information or certain line items such as new insurance costs projections, or when we in the process of discussing new projects. So additionally, as you know, the board has had numerous facility option discussions since the adoption of the budget in May. And that may very well affect our expenditures during this current fiscal year. Appropriation lines that relate to facility enhancements have been significantly increased for that very reason. And those specific line items are the transfer to special reserve from the corporate fund and the increase in the consulting line. Both of those were increased to $1 million. The transfer will come from the operational reserves, and the increase in the special reserves consulting line item will include potential architect costs, environmental or engineering consulting costs associated with capital projects, as we've discussed regarding any renovation. I do want to make the point that the library wouldn't expend all of our capital project funds in this next fiscal year, and I think that our owner's rep also discussed that a little bit, but CCS did suggest including a healthy amount in the event the board moves at an efficient pace with architects and possibly other consultants on our path to renovate the library. Another event of note is COVID-19. So we have a response regarding the PPE expenditures, and all of these factors and others affect this year's appropriation allowance. And most of the funds that are used for the above budget spending primarily come from our operational reserves in the corporate fund. And I want to make mention that these expenditures will not impact the tax levy. The corporate fund is used to, as you know, support the basic needs of the library, materials, salaries, and supplies. And the one line item in the special reserve appropriation was correspondingly adjusted to authorize the additional expenditure for capital projects. And again, we do not levy for the special reserve fund. So in summary, appropriation allowances do not necessarily mean we will spend up to that appropriation. The allowance does allow and authorize expenditures if we require going beyond the previously budgeted amount, such as the additional PPE or moving forward with engineering consultants. And then just lastly, the B&A must be approved or adopted in September. And that's all I have.
So is anybody got a question or comment on the B&A?
This is Vice President Bartelli.
Okay.
Director Weinstein, where is number 2? We have 1, the corporate fund. I just can't see it.
You know, you're correct.
What shouldn't building? I'm sorry.
You're correct. The numbering is off. You know, and I think what happened was that we removed the working cap fund and it shifted because we remove the working cash fund. So good eye.
So then where would the building maintenance be? That would be number 2, I assume. If we refer to page 7, the treasurer's report, we have the 5 categories, correct? Corporate, building maintenance, IMRF, FICA, and working cash.
We've dissolved the building maintenance.
Ah. Duh. Thank you.
But we will adjust the numbering there.
Okay, that's great. Thank
So-
you.
So Director Weinstein, you just change the numbers. We don't, not gonna, yeah, that's no problem then. Okay.
Great.
Any other trustees with a question or comment on the B&A?
I guess what I was hoping to see was, I was hoping to see kind of like what the budget was that was being requested compared to what was spent in each of these categories in the prior fiscal year. And I mean, I ask for this every year and I don't seem to be able to get it.
Well, I think, I'm sorry.
So I guess, I mean, I don't know if I'm the only one that calculates this, maybe I am, but I mean, I will go back and I will look at, it's very difficult for me to put what we get in our expenses and put them into the categories that are here because they don't match up 1-to-1. I don't know if you guys have ever tried to do that, but they don't match up that way. So I can't tell you without doing a whole lot of manipulation, like how much is the budgeted amount increasing over what we spent in salaries? And then line item by line item, how much is our health insurance budgeted amount increasing over health insurance and unemployment year over year? I mean, I ask for this every year, and I don't think anybody at the library, frankly, wants to do it because it's very difficult to do.
Well, I'll actually answer the question. So the budget column is the working budget that we passed earlier, May. Did we do it this year or April?
May.
I know it was going to be really early. The COVID screwed up. So I don't know if it was April or May. So that's that. Now, as far as now, if you go to our monthly reports, our expense reports we get every month in our board packet. So it starts on page 14 of our packet. You'll see in the right hand or second to last column, it's got the fiscal year 2021 budget, which ties to this document. So I'm looking at salaries, total salaries on page 14 of our board packet, the 2,262,000. That ties to the salaries in the budgeted column. So every month we have, look at that camera here. Every month we have, these reports in our board packet. So that's going to show.
Don't use salaries. Salaries is like the example that it lines up. I mean, now when you take like total health and dental insurance, and then you have to add other staff benefits, and then you have to figure out where to put FICA expenses, and then you have to put where to add IMRF expenses. It becomes very difficult. And I brought this up in May. And I mean, I remember, Tom, you specifically saying, don't worry about it, because when we passed it in May, you said, well, we'll have an opportunity to look at it and really solidify it before we're stuck with it when we look at the B&A. And I'm just, it's like, kicking the can down the road, and we're stuck again. Well, and I don't have the information that I've asked for time and time again, year after year.
But I guess, I mean, at the end of the day, these reports do tie to the budget column and what we passed with the working budget earlier in the year. So, I mean.
Okay, then would you do me a favor? will
Sure.
you create another column and put in there what we spent in 2019 to 2020 in each of these rows?
But I don't think we can't, because if you're talking about the ordinance that's right above, this is, I think, statutory, how it's got to be done, where you don't put any extra additional columns. You have to just have the budget number and the appropriation amount. I don't think we can add.
Do it in pencil and send it to me. Do it in pencil,
Yep.
write
I'm
it
talking
in and scan it to me.
But I'm talking,
Nobody can do it. They're unwilling to do it for me.
but I'm talking about the ordinance itself. We can't be adding any additional columns to this. This is statutory documentation, so we can't add additional columns. But if you go to our expense reports we get every month, that will give you the information that you're asking and talking about, though. So
It takes several hours because the rows do not correspond one-to-one. I mean, it does take calculations. And what I'm saying is, I cannot tell from this how much health insurance and unemployment, how much did it go up? How much are we asking in the budget versus what we spent?
So you can find it in the financials, and then what we did modify this past year was in the working budget that was passed and that is posted on the website. We also had projected actuals, and we're pretty close to what we projected in terms of actuals. And then with, like, let's say health insurance, we do receive new information that comes after we pass the working budget. For instance, I have just scribbled notes here that our health insurance company, Limerick, they suggested a 7% increase way back. And then they also recommended that we almost double that because of COVID. So that's why we went from what was spent to basically a 13% increase. And again, that's just the appropriation. It doesn't mean that that's what we're going to spend up to. So
I'm not talking about the appropriation. I mean, that's the second step. I'm talking about the budgeted amount.
right. And so in the budgeted amount, there is in the past approved working budget, there is a projected amount. And then in the financials, as President Hummel mentioned, you can see what the library has expended up to June 30th. But I do have to say that those are unaudited numbers, and we will receive another document at the end of that. Once the audit is completed, you will see there will be some shifting that happens in terms of the end of the year expenditures. That's a small amount, but it will adjust somewhat.
Okay, let me ask you this, Tatiana. How hard would it be? And Tom, I don't want to change the original that's going. I understand that this document cannot be touched, but how hard would it be for staff to fill out unaudited, but year-end numbers unaudited for each of these rows? So we could figure out what the percentage changes for year-end numbers unaudited compared to what we're budgeting. I mean, why is that so hard to get?
I mean, you could look at last month's packet and you'll see the June 30th number, which will give you those unaudited numbers. It won't maybe give you a percentage.
What I end up having to do, though, is I end up having to add all these different rows because they don't line up on a one-to-one basis.
Yes,
I mean, like,
these are the categories that were put together by our attorney to make it kind of clean lines for the ordinance. And I know what you're saying, Trustee Sullivan, that some of the lines here encompass more lines in our financial documents, more detail. And that's what staff is here for, is to do that math. And all of the expenditures are in the financials. So they're out there for the public and for the trustees to take a look at. But for this ordinance, they are in the categories that our attorney has agreed make sense for the ordinance.
I agree with you. I'm not asking you to change it for the ordinance. I'm not asking you to change it for the packet. I'm saying that it is not reasonable to ask a trustee to make all of those calculations when you guys keep all this information in spreadsheets already. And you can come up with those figures more expediently than I can, and you can share them with all the trustees. You know what? It would be a real embarrassment if somebody said to me, you know, this health insurance unemployment, how much did that go up in your budgeted amount compared to what you spent last year? And you know what? I would say, oh, it's on our website. You figure it out. You know, because I'm a trustee and they don't give me that information. You know what? That's a travesty. You guys have the spreadsheets, and I've asked for this year after year. And one year I did it, and you guys, you know, it's like it took me forever. And then I asked you guys to send me the spreadsheets. I mean, if you want me to do it for all the trustees, that's fine. I'll do it. But then you need to send me all of your spreadsheets because you have it. You have the info.
No,
I mean,
yeah, I mean, well, I'm just looking like,
Tom, you're an accountant. You should
I
get this.
no, I know what you're saying, but I mean, I could go to our last month's packet and you could see like the June 30th number. So the health, wait, hang on, let me look where I'm at now, because I got papers all over the place. I mean, you could look at where we were at year end if you go to last month's packet. I mean, yeah, you'd have to pull last month's packet, but you could get that information of where we're at. So,
And you have to add multiple subtotals to get together to get this line item.
some line items, I mean, some are pretty straightforward, like the first one, salaries. Some, you're right, there are a couple that are paired up that are not, that are broken out in more detail.
I've done it. I know how hard it is. I know how much time it takes. I mean, if staff would just agree to do it, we'd be done talking about it. I'm just surprised.
Is this something that the entire board wants to happen? I mean, what staff provides and what staff's role is to do kind of the dirty work and then present to the board and discuss the ups and downs and then publish the public information. But I would like direction from the entire board. And there was no direction. I mean, the direction was to create the tentative B&A without the entire board saying we want it done very differently or presented in a different way. So if you could, if everyone could chime in, I'd appreciate that.
I mean, we provided more detail during the working budget process, if I recall correct.
Yes.
No, because we don't have year-end totals.
So the year end, so like year end, it looks like for the health insurance and dental and then the unemployment last year was a little over $290,000. If I'm looking at last month's packet correctly.
And we have something from Sikich, our new accounting firm that kind of rounds up the year-end totals very soon. And again, new totals after our audit.
May I offer a recommendation?
Go for it.
Yes, please.
Is that this topic should really be discussed within the financial committee in context of any other asks that we need from independent. Like this isn't to like, should we or should we not have it, right? That the financial committee is there to discuss any asks that we have of our financial team, both vendor and staff. And, you know, so maybe and maybe there should be a meeting by the finance committee. So you're welcome, Treasurer Norton. But to have that discussion, but in the context of any other asks that we do have related to finances. Because it's not just one or the other, it should be kind of as we're going through this package.
Sounds good. I agree. That's any,
Jenny, are you on board with that?
Yes, of course I am.
so the committee could discuss it. Obviously, the full board would still have to give full consent, but that's fine. Any other questions on the B&A?
Yeah, I had a couple more. Hang on.
Okay.
Somebody else can go.
All
Somebody
right,
else.
we'll go with Treasurer Norton. Do you have any questions or comments on the B&A?
I'm good.
Trustee Larson?
No, I'm good.
Trustee Duffy?
No, it was clear. Maybe in the future, Tatiana, I liked how you walked through that. But if we could have had that in written form, that would have also been helpful too. But that's more of a for next time. But no, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Vice President Bartelli?
I'm good, thank you.
Secretary Swistak?
I'm good, thank you.
All righty. Trustee Sullivan, you got your other question?
Yeah, I do. I'm kind of wondering why we've allocated money for facility, campus, furniture, equipment, unless these are monies we've already spent, and the security system in the special reserve fund. Because unless we've already spent that money, I would think we'd be putting that on hold, given that we're going to go forward with renovating our current building.
Well, we all know the consulting line. The facility campus is, I believe, what we've allocated for that is for what I mentioned with the French drain. What was else on that list? Oh, it could be with the, I'm forgetting the name of the pipe, the sewer.
Oh, if there
One of the story, yeah.
Stormwater issues that needed immediate attention. That's why it was allocated there. Furniture and equipment, if a table breaks or if all of these chairs in the meeting room end their life, things like that. Interior updates is if we get some graffiti, and we need to repaint, things like that. Security system, that included also RFID, and that is still on the docket. And that can, morph with whatever we do with the renovation. And then the keyless entry was also part of that security system. Again, it's just an allocated line.
So it's a placeholder.
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else? Good.
Well, I'll say this and then I'll shut up. I'm just concerned that our budget, and I said this when we passed it before, it's going up every year, and it's costing us more. I mean, I'm not talking about any of the renovations, but we're going up precipitously, and I don't know that we're providing all this extra value, and yet our budget is continuously going up. And there's, for instance, there's areas in there that are, I guess, for lack of a better term, placeholders. I don't like that. Enough
Well,
said.
it's just a budget, in case we got to spend. So you got to budget and appropriate money that you may need. If we don't need it, we don't need it. But the actual spending's been pretty flat over the last few years at least. So,
Yeah, the actuals.
I mean, yeah.
Okay, so how did last year we spend 5.2?
No.
Or 5.3? Right. So that's what we budgeted for. I'm not talking appropriated, I'm talking budget.
But if you look at prior to because where it's up to 5.2 is with the special reserves. We're gonna have probably a lot more special reserve spending than we've had in years past. So if you just go like to the regular operating, you're at 4.38 million. And then the IMRF and FICA take you about 4.7, and that might be a hair higher than actual, or right around, but it's not, it's just a budget. I mean, it's pretty much flat, I would say. I don't have the actual number in front of me, but it sounds about right. It's pretty flat, give or take. So if there's not any questions or comments, Treasurer Norton, do you have anything else? Are you good?
No, I do not.
Okay. If there's no other questions or comments, could we have a roll call on approving the tentative B&A ordinance?
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Thomas Duffy,
Aye.
Emily Swissack,
Aye.
Karen Larson,
Aye.
Jenny Norton,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan,
I'm going to abstain. I don't feel I have enough information.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye, the motion passes. And then Director Weinstein, correct me if I'm wrong, next month then we have a meeting that would start like a half hour before the regular meeting for the public hearing for this? Okay, so I don't know, I know historically it's been 6:30, but did we do 6:45 last year?
Oh, you might be right.
Yeah, so just for the trustees to give you a heads up for next month, the meeting will be 15, we'll have two meetings technically. We'll have a public hearing prior to the regular meeting. So that's part of the other reason why we have to do special board meeting too, is because we're gonna have technically two meetings next month already with the same day though.
Did we already post the time?
Do we publish the public?
It should probably, it's probably on there.
6:30, yeah. It's gonna be at 6:30.
Okay, that's fine. So be prepared. Next item on the agenda is 9G, which is accept the Illinois Public Library Annual Report. Can I have a motion to approve IPLAR?
This is Trustee Duffy.
Okay.
I move to accept the Illinois Public Library Annual Report.
All right, we have a motion. Can I have a second, please?
Sullivan seconds.
Sullivan, second.
Trustee Larson said it
Pardon
first.
me?
Trustee Larson said it first.
Oh, Trustee Larson got you. I couldn't hear her. Apologize. All right, Director Weinstein, you want to quickly explain this?
Yeah, it's just, this is all of the statistics for the past fiscal year. Of course, they are very, very skewed because we had a whole quarter where there were a number of less than normal statistics regarding programming and such. But this is the annual report that goes into the states, and all libraries are dealing with the same problems we are dealing with statistics.
And this helps us get our per capita grant too, correct?
Yeah, we have to acknowledge this and file this and to qualify for the per capita.
Any questions or comments on the IPLAR report? Trustee Norton, anything?
No, thank you.
Okay, roll call, please.
Thomas Duffy,
Aye.
Karen Larson,
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Jenny Norton,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan,
Aye.
Emily Swissack,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye, motion passes. The next two items on the agenda we'll do after executive session, because we have to review minutes. Do the trustees just want to do the 5-minute comment period now, or do you rather do it after we come back to after executive session?
Comment period now.
Do it now? Okay. All righty. Is everybody okay with that? Just shake your head yes or no. Good, okay. We'll go with Trustee Duffy first.
Yeah. I wasn't prepared, but I'm excited. I think we went through a very good deliberative process with the options that have been afforded to us and explored related to the renovations of the library. And so I'm excited to see us moving forward and getting to that next stage. So thank you.
Trustee Larson.
I don't really have anything right now.
Okay. Treasurer Norton.
Nothing for me, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Vice President Bartelli.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay, Trustee or Secretary Swistak.
I just wanted to thank staff again for all the hard work that they're doing and say that I am continuing to be appreciative of curbside pickup for materials and also for the adventure kits for the youth and the adult and teen craft kits. It's really nice to still have some programming options out there, even though we're not having them inside the building. And I really appreciate that. And the increased story times on social media, and that they're doing it on Twitch, and so they're live, and I'm appreciating that, and the other videos and just kind of product stuff that is going out on social media, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. So I appreciate that. So thank you.
Trustee Sullivan.
No, not at this time. Thank you.
All right, and then I will wrap it up. I also want to thank staff for all their work, not just this past month, but the whole year so far with this crazy year we've had. I know when I talked to the director at some point in the last month or so, I think we brought up we have to update the special reserve ordinance pretty soon. So I'll talk to her about how we want to go about that, because I think the last time, correct me if I might be wrong on this, did that go through a committee before or no? But like one we did years ago, or did it go just straight through the full board?
It was committee of the whole.
Okay. So we'll have to work on that. That will work in tandem with what we'll be doing with the facility. The other thing, which actually is another reason we'll have to probably do a special board meeting or two in the upcoming weeks or months, is because next month is going to be busy because we'll be passing the B&A, plus other things. And now we will also do the director's review next month. Originally, we were planning to doing it this month, but with the heavy workload, and we did that. We'll wait it for next month to do it. So we will have another full agenda. So we'll definitely have a special board meeting. I'll work with the director and CCS, and of course all of you guys to schedule it. I don't know, Tatiana, you think it's probably just good to try to do all the facility stuff, which obviously would be the lion's share of that meeting anyways, but just do it all so we don't have to deal with any of that at a regular meeting? Or do you just want to wait to discuss that between you and I in the next?
Having a special meeting regarding the facility, I think is warranted.
Oh, yeah, but we, like the next regular meeting that we would have scheduled, probably wouldn't have any facility stuff on there. We could just tackle what we have on the agenda beside that.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. And then that's all I had. Okay, so next item on the agenda is executive session. Could somebody read the citation so we could go in executive session to review the minutes and recordings?
Trustee Duffy, I move that we go into executive session per 5 ILCS 120-2C21, discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed under this act, whether for purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by section 2.06.
Motion, can I have a second, please? Somebody want a second, please?
Trustee Norton, I second.
All right, Trustee Norton. Roll call, please, to go into executive session.
Comments?
Oh, sorry, any questions or comments on this motion? If
No.
not, roll call, please.
Thomas Duffy,
Aye.
Jenny Norton,
Aye.
Karen Larson, Liz Sullivan,
Aye.
Emily Swistek,
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye, motion passes. We will be going into executive session at 9:37. All right, we are back in the open session at 9:59 still. We have to take action on 9H, semi-annual review of executive session minutes. Can I have a motion to release the minutes for the minutes that we were talking about in closed session?
I'll give it a stab. This is Trustee Duffy. I move to release the February 12th, 2020 executive session minutes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
This is Secretary Swistax. I second.
Any questions or comments on this motion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
Thomas Duffy.
Aye.
Emily Swistack.
Aye.
Jenny Norton.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Aye.
Karen Larson.
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye, motion passes. Next item is 9A or 9I, review executive session minutes, recordings more than 18 months old. There's no action because we're not going to be releasing or destroying any of the tapes, so there's no action on that one. Director Weinstein, do you want the trustees to return these two handouts to you, or?
You can destroy them.
Okay. And then, so with nothing else, could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I
I
move
move
to
to
adjourn.
I'll give it to
Go there.
Trustee Sullivan. I think Trustee Sullivan got that one in just by a hair. Can I have a second, please?
I second.
Okay, Trustee Duffy has a second. Questions or comments on the adjournment motion? Roll call, please.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Thomas Duffy.
Aye.
Emily Swistack.
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Aye.
Karen Larson.
Aye.
Jenny Norton.
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye, motion passes. We are adjourned at 10:02.